The Bible warned us, never trust a woman who does this. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey like a honeycomb, and her speech is smoother than oil. Proverbs 5:3. Solomon is anxious to warn his son against one of the besetting sins of youth. Warren Wiersbe, a Central Baptist Church teacher, once said, "People who commit sexual sins think their problems are solved. She understands me so much better than my wife does, and that life will get better and better. But disobedience to God's laws always brings sad consequences, and sinners eventually pay dearly for their brief moments of pleasure." Solomon and many other kings in the Bible lost their way because they did not heed this advice. Proverbs 5 is an excellent chapter that talks about a sensitive topic boldly and directly. We read, "For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey." This explains why it was important for the son to hold on to discretion and knowledge. An immoral woman would test those things. Honey is sweet, and oil is pleasant, and these represent the temptations of immorality. Solomon warns of the lips of an immoral woman. Solomon's words are poetic and powerful. The figures of the lips and the mouth represent the words that an immoral woman might use to get a man to do what she wants. Almost always, what is said is the first step toward making immoral friends. This shows how important it is for men and women to watch what they say and how they talk. The immoral woman can also deal with what has been called the oldest profession, prostitution. Solomon focuses on the immoral woman in this passage, but not because he believes that men are always moral, or because it is mainly immoral women who seduce and corrupt moral men. The author of the Song of Solomon was far too wise and astute in romance and seduction to believe that. Since Solomon wrote this to his son, he sensed this was his greatest and closest moral threat. He might have warned against an immoral man, and these principles of seduction can be applied to either men or women, depending on the circumstances. During Solomon's time, some women could attract and allure men with the sweetness of honey and the pleasantness of oil. They used that ability for their own benefit, operating outside of the marriage covenant. There may be something emotional, something material, something sensual, something romantic, or anything else they can gain. A warning was needed against these women. Perhaps our day is worse than Solomon's. The current culture is filled with pictures of alluring women and their use of attraction to gain things that are sweet and pleasant to them. Proverbs 5:4-7, New American Standard Bible. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways are unstable. She does know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. At first, she seems pleasant and desirable, but in the end, she is bitter as wormwood. It is the old story. Sin is attractive as a prospect, but hideous in retrospect. The price of going to bed with her is enormous. Guilty conscience, remorse, scandal, venereal disease, wrecked marriage, broken home, mental disturbance, and other ills. The teacher tells the son the truth. In the end, she is bitter as wormwood. Honey is sweet, but wormwood is bitter. In immorality, the allure of sweetness becomes bitter, and her smooth, oil-like pleasantness becomes sharp as a two-edged sword. It is a change from honey to wormwood, from the smoothness of oil to the sharpness of a sword, from the path of life to the highway of death. Morgan. The image of the two-edged sword Literally, a sword with more than one mouth signifies that a liaison with this woman brings pain and destruction. Ross. Her feet go down to death. An immoral woman's path leads to death. She promises to add life, but she ends up taking it away. We then read that her ways are unstable. The determination to attract someone else into immorality is not a judgment made by a stable person who wants the best for either self or the one seduced. Those led into immorality often feel they know their partner's motives in sin, but Solomon rightly observed, "You do not know them." A mature and stable person would say, "If I really loved this person, I would not act against their interest and my own. I will reject this immorality because I do, in fact, love them, and will express my love only in ways that would honor God and His people. My desire for pleasure and adventure must not reign supreme in my life. Whatever good I may think would come of this, it is not good and will not bring good." Proverbs 5, 8-14, New American Standard Bible. "Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house. Otherwise, you will give your vigor to others, and your years to the cruel one. And strangers will be filled with your strength, and your hard-earned possessions will go to the house of a foreigner. And you will groan in the end, when your flesh and your body are consumed. And you say, 'How I hated instruction, and my heart disdainfully rejected rebuke. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers, nor incline my ear to my instructors. I was almost in total ruin, in the midst of the assembly and congregation.'" Solomon didn't advise his son to stay in the immoral woman's presence and test his ability to resist her seductions. The best defense was distance, to not even go near the door of her house. The Apostle Paul would write much later in 2 Timothy 2, 22-23, Amplified Bible, "Run away from youthful lusts, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those believers who call on the Lord out of pure heart, but have nothing to do with foolish and ignorant speculations, useless disputes over unedifying, stupid controversies, since you know that they produce strife and give birth to quarrels." Timothy was probably about 35 years of age at this time. Therefore, youthful lusts do not necessarily mean such lusts as would be particularly characteristic of a teenager, but would include all the unholy desires that would present themselves to a young servant of the Lord and seek to divert him from the path of purity and righteousness. Not only is Timothy to flee, the longer one stays in the presence of such enticement to evil, the worse the danger becomes. We must remove our way from her, not only in presence, but also in heart and mind. We must put away the enticements common to our day and work for a mindset on things above. Colossians 3, 1-2. "Therefore, if you have been raised with Christ to a new life, sharing in His resurrection from the dead, keep seeking the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind and keep focused habitually on the things above, the heavenly things, not on things that are on the earth, which have only temporal value." Philippians 4, 8. "Finally, believers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable and worthy of respect, whatever is right and confirmed by God's word, whatever is pure and wholesome, whatever is lovely and brings peace, whatever is admirable and of good repute, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think continually on these things. Center your mind on them and implant them in your heart. Frank Derek Kidner, a popular Bible commentator, stated about this: "The New Testament echoes this practical, if seemingly unheroic advice, which could mean, in terms of the detailed decision, change your job, change your newspaper, break with that set of friends." Kidner. The teacher warns, lest you give your honor to others. In his description of the consequences of immorality, Solomon begins by describing honor as one of the things lost. The one who stays pure can have a valid sense of honor. Life is ruined by adultery and immorality. God's command that our very close and intimate relationships stay only in the covenant of marriage was not given to take out from our life and enjoyment, but to add to it. We read, "And your hard-earned possessions will go to the house of a foreigner." Adultery has cost many men their wealth in the modern world. Although lust and immorality today may not lead to slavery, it still leads to alimony, child support, broken homes, hurt, jealousy, lonely people, and venereal disease. Waltke. We read, "And you mourn at last." The young man dreamed of pleasure in wanton dalliance. He hoped to find delight. But when the lamp or at the last began to shine, he saw rottenness in his bones, filthiness in his flesh, pains and griefs and sorrows as the necessary consequence of sin. Spurgeon. When your flesh and body are consumed. Immorality and lustful behavior leads to disease and the breakdown of health. One's health can be taken away by the stress of living a double deceptive life. The point of these verses is clear. The price of infidelity may be high, for everything one works for, position, power, prosperity, could be lost either through the avaricious demands of the woman or the outcry for restitution by the community. Ross. How I have hated instruction. There is the added grief of regret and remorse. The burned-out wreck reproaches himself for not having obeyed his parents, his Sunday school teachers, and his Christian friends. He could have avoided oceans of misery, but he was too pig-headed to be warned. One great price of this type of immorality is regret. When we see how empty the promises of sin are, and how great the price for those sins is, deep sorrow and regret are logical responses. In the midst of the assembly and congregation, what the adulterer thought would remain secret was exposed. When he committed his sin, he thought no one would find out about it. He was exposed in the midst of the assembly for his foolishness, betrayal, and lack of self-control. Proverbs 5:15-19, New American Standard Bible. Drink water from your own cistern, and fresh water from your own well. Should your springs overflow into the street, streams of water in the public squares, let them be yours alone, and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth. Like a loving doe and a graceful mountain goat, let her breasts satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. In figurative language, Solomon urges his son to find all his needs with his own wife in a life of pure married love. According to the KJV, This verse describes the blessings of a faithful marriage relationship reaching out to family and friends. And running water from your own well. God's provision for our needs is found in the marital bed, which is pure before Him. Hebrews 13:4, Amplified Bible. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, that is, regarded as something of great value, and the marriage bed undefiled by immorality or by any sexual sin. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Marriage should be held in honor by all. This was God's holy will for mankind before sin entered the world, and it was instituted by Him before sin entered the world. In order to keep their marriages undefiled, married people should keep their vows faithfully. Reformation Bishop Latimer reminded the immoral King Henry VIII of this in a way that was as convincing as it was courageous. He presented the king with a finely wrapped Bible. On the wrapping was inscribed the words, "Fornicators and adulterers God will judge." Though some are dissatisfied with what God provides in marriage, that dissatisfaction is more a reflection on them than their spouse. Only a fool would deny the physical pleasures of lovemaking, but a more mature mind understands that righteous intimacy is also a great reward. A true marriage relationship is exclusive, and children enjoy the security of belonging. The teacher cautions, "Rejoice with the wife of your youth." Solomon alluded to God's plan for marriage, even if he did not follow it himself. God's best for humanity is for a man to marry a wife in his youth, and for him to rejoice with her for the rest of his days. Life circumstances mean there will be many different ways this is lived out. But when a man does marry a woman in his youth, God's best is for him to rejoice in her until death parts them. There is a choice involved in the exhortation to rejoice with the wife of your youth. Sometimes a husband or wife must choose to rejoice in their spouse. Our affections are much more affected by where we choose to focus them than people realize. There is no doubt that he fell far short of God's plan for one man to marry one woman, and to be satisfied with the wife of his youth. Solomon wrote about this ideal in the Song of Solomon, but never enjoyed it, or did so only for a brief time. According to Solomon, if a man is not satisfied with one woman, the wife of his youth, then he will not be satisfied with 1,000 women. What is the number of people who have destroyed their lives and damaged the lives of others through immorality? Character has become a crucial issue today precisely because of the myriad of leaders in the political, business, and religious worlds who have fallen morally. No doubt, spiritual warfare has played a big role in the tens of thousands of people who have failed. Leaders must remember that they influence many others beyond themselves. They never fall into a vacuum. They must also realize that replacing fallen leaders is a slow and challenging process. Those who pay attention to sound advice and learn from the experience of others develop true discretion. Nothing but the Word of God is an adequate safeguard against the seduction and delusion running rampant in our day.